Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning roundtable discussion. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And we are very glad that you could join us in America this Memorial Weekend. And we will begin with our morning prayer.
I'm reading from page 22 of Retrospection and Introspection. It may be that the mortal life battle still wages and must continue till its involved errors are vanquished by victory bringing science. But this triumph will come. God is over all. He alone is our origin, aim, and being. The real man is not of the dust, nor is he ever created through the flesh. For his father and mother are the one spirit, and his brethren are all the children of one parent, the eternal good. Mary Baker Eddy.
Beautiful, thank you. This is what it is to be the children of light. We have one inheritance, all brothers and sisters in Christ. Thank you. All right, the watching point.
Watch number 376. Watch that you appreciate what the statement means, quote, resist the devil and he will flee from you, unquote. Once a scientist whose husband was not interested had to let him be taken to a hospital in Boston because he had, because he had diabetes. Gangrene had set in, so the doctors decided to amputate his foot. But he rose up in rebellion and said he would be blank if any doctor was going to cut him up. They had to let him come home, and he had no further medical treatment. Yet he completely recovered from this supposedly fatal illness. Even the decay in his flesh was healed. His wife declares that she gave him no treatment in science beyond the effort to keep her own thought poised in the truth. The Bible does not say, quote, be a Christian Scientist and resist the devil, unquote. It merely says resist the devil. Without a knowledge of science, this man resisted the devil, whereas most of us require understanding in order to be able to do so. The important point is that resistance, even when not based on science, often causes the devil to flee from us. While it is not possible to gauge to what degree this man was benefited by his wife's thought, the helpful point about his experience is that it should cause us to feel that if he could resist such a fearsome condition without a knowledge of science, how much more should we be able to resist evil, knowing as we do the allness of God and the nothingness of error? If he could resist diabetes largely with the human will, so that it fled away, why should we fear such a seemingly fatal physical condition when we know how to resist from a scientific standpoint?
Isn't that wonderful? I sometimes wonder about that. Well, we don't have a monopoly on this truth. Many people demonstrate it just by doing what this dear man did with great faith and understanding. Well, not even the understanding. He just rejected it. So how much more can we be doing with the understanding of it? Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that it's there, and it's not like this is the first time we've heard about people who have not taken doctor's diagnosis, and they've just I'm not going to accept that, and things change.
Absolutely.
So, no, I was just going to the doctor, just because they wear a white coat, does not mean that they're the only authority on the planet, that whatever they say goes. It's not true. We have to remember that sometimes when we think that a doctor's prescription is, well, I guess then it must be true if he says it or she says it.
That's it.
Here's proof.
We fall down under this. It's all suggestion, as we are going to get into in this lesson this week. There's so much to discuss. Thank you. Well, it's a wonderful watching point and something to keep in mind.
I did want to say about it. It says, we don't know how much he was benefited by his wife thought.
Yes.
But we do know he was benefited by her not holding him in error, malpracticing.
That's very true.
So a lot of people in that situation.
It's very true. He had the support of his wife, which I'm sure created for a Christly atmosphere. And he probably knew a little bit of science just from living with her.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in appearance, he refused to violate the first commandment.
Which is what we are all supposed to be obeying. So.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, thank you, Karen, for that. All the watching points you so lovingly prepare for us every week. Sarah,
it is fun to find them that sort of go with the lesson. I really enjoy looking for that.
well,
I'm enjoying it.
that
Good.
book is a great, great blessing to
You
us
get
all.
to keep the job.
Phew.
Oh, my. I just got a message from Sarah. They won't be here today. She was to greet us. So I thought we'll have Imogen greet us in Australia.
Okay, so when we greet in Australia, in Aussie, we have to remember that we're trying to keep the flies out of our mouth when we talk. So it sounds like this. G'day, mate.
Thank you. And I knew you would come up with something. Isn't that better? Oh, my.
Keep the barbed wire in your mouth so the Aussies don't get in.
As you see, it almost is a different language, right? I mean, with all due respect, I do have trouble sometimes understanding some of our English between things. Anyway. So this morning, I would like to say a few things before we get into a lot of the lesson. One is our new Liberator is just about hot off the press, right?
Ready in the mail?
Oh, it'll be in the mail. Okay, on the 121st Psalm. I want to thank so many of you for all your contributions because your testimonies become articles. Some of you sent articles and the amazing pictures we have. We have a beautiful picture of Sweden from Summerled. He's got a beautiful website. I think it's called Fairy Hill or something like that. Of
That's right.
photography, and Karen is an artist. So many of you are artists. I mean, Nancy in Texas is, and of course Luann and
Dale A.
Dale A. Yes, Dale A. And then we have beautiful pictures of Izzy's little lammies, just adorable. And then the one that, well, they stole our heart, but then there was this Mara in Mississippi of this little duckling. Oh my gosh, Jeremy said that little duckling was the most photogenic duckling in the whole. He created a whole page of that little duckling. And wait till you see it. You're all just going to fall in love with that little duckling as well as the little man and all the other beautiful pictures. I mean, Stefan in our newsletter of Germany, and we had Imogen in Australia, and the beautiful pictures Anne in England sends us. I'm almost overwhelmed with all of it, and there are many others I probably didn't mention, but I am very grateful for all of you for that. So, and in the newest magazine that's coming out, Carrie found an article called Memorial Services, Christian Science Sentinel, June 1st, 1907. It's going to be in our History Corner. By special invitation of the Reverend Mary Baker Glover Eddy, the memorial service of the E.E. Sturvet Post No. 2 GAR, together with the Allied Organization, Women's Relief Corps, Daughters of Veterans, Sons of Veterans, and the Spanish War Veterans, was held yesterday, Sunday afternoon at 4:30 in the First Church of Christ Scientists. It is said to be the first time in the history of the church in this country that such an event has occurred. And it goes on, but we know Mary Baker Eddy had great respect and love for the military, for the preservation of our liberty, and we must all be aware of this, keep it in our prayers always, these dear people. I know, I told Gary as I was driving to church this morning and passing all these people jogging and doing various things on this beautiful day here, I thought all of us here, we're keeping watch as well over the world. Most of these people don't know how to keep a watch, and they are, just out enjoying the day, but never absent from your post, never off guard, never ill-humored, never unready to work for God. Mary Baker Eddy. We are in an army, and it's a very serious thing that we're doing. And our hour together this morning is going to be very serious as well. So, our subject, ancient and modern necromancy, alias mesmerism, and hypnotism denounced. Louise on the forum gave us a definition of these various words. We've gone over them before, but we'll go over them again. I'll have Gary. Definitions of those words.
Okay. Necromancy. The art of revealing future events by means of pretended communication with the dead. Enchantment. Conjuration. It's from 1828 Webster's. Conjuration of the spirits of the dead for purposes of magically revealing the future or influencing the course of events. Merriam-Webster. A method of divination through alleged communication with the dead. Black art. Magic in general, especially that practiced by a witch or sorcerer. Sorcery, witchcraft. Mesmerism. The act of putting someone into a mental state like sleep, in which a person's thoughts can be easily influenced by someone else. Hypnotism, as induced through animal magnetism. Hypnotism, a compelling attraction, fascination, irresistible attraction. Hypnosis, hypnotism, a trance-like state that resembles sleep, but is induced by a person whose suggestions are readily accepted by the subject. An artificially induced altered state of consciousness, characterized by heightened suggestibility and receptivity to direction. Denounced, accused, proclaimed, threatened by open declaration. Pronounced, especially publicly, to be blameworthy or evil. Criticized strongly and publicly. To condemn or censure openly or publicly. To make a formal accusation against. Period.
So, the power of, it's a non-power, but there it comes to you for life, and you give it all the life it has. The suggestions that are out there. That's how all things start, with a suggestion. And that's where you have to nail it, to be so instant in truth that error is always too late. This is why we never let our guard down. And then, of course, what we know about hypnotism and how Mrs. Eddy, who else discusses it like her? And then I love that denounced definition of denounced. That's what we must do, publicly denounce it. Have it just like that man did when he was told something false. He denounced it and meant it. Say what you mean and mean what you say. So, Lillian, read the golden text for us.
Take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to understand and withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand.
Many people are asking, I've been asked anyway, and not from people from this church, but what is happening, what's going on in America. Another tragic event occurred this week. Heartbreaking, as they all are. One thing that we were taught here to study many years ago, and I've had roundtables on this before, but it is the pamphlet called Brainwashing. If you want to know what's going on, this is what is going on.
Read the pamphlet.
It is on our book site, too.
Yes, I'm going to read parts of it today again, because this is a wake-up call, and it definitely goes with this topic. It's called Brainwashing, a synthesis of the Russian textbook on psychopolitics. Psychopolitics, the art and science of asserting and maintaining dominion over the thoughts and loyalties of individuals, officers, bureaus, and masses, and the effecting of the conquest of enemy nations through what they are calling mental healing, which we know is not. And then an editorial note says, the end of a war is the control of a conquered people. If a people can be conquered in the absence of war, the end of the war will have been achieved without the destructions of war. And then this manual of the Communist Party should be in the hands of every loyal American, that they may be alerted to the fact that it is not always by armies and guns that a nation is conquered. This has been going on, not just in America, it's been going on everywhere, but our country is so big, and we allow everyone to come in, and we have, for the most part, very liberal, kind laws for people that get misused. And so we seem under maybe a fiercer attack, although that might be arguable. But anyway, I'll read some other quotes just referring to Christian Science, because we are in the pamphlet. They were out for Christian Scientists. And why is that?
We understand.
We're awake.
The only way to
handle
resist.
it.
The only way to resist. If you know you're under the mind of Christ, you have the mind of Christ, they cannot reach you. No matter what they do, they cannot reach you. If you don't know this, if you are not working constantly, they will find a way. And if not you, maybe to get to a family member, especially our youth. It's out hunting. You can call it whatever you want. The best word for it is animal magnetism, right? We call it communism in this, but it's animal magnetism, and it rises up, or it seems to rise up, when people are sleeping. If you're awake, if there's light, the darkness cannot come. Okay, a quote. Religion must be made synonymous with neurosis and psychosis. People who are deeply religious would be less and less held responsible for their own sanity, and should be more and more relegated to the ministrations of psychopolitical operatives. In the field of pure healing, the Church of Christ Science of Boston, Massachusetts, excels in commanding the public favor and operates many sanitariums. All of these must be swept aside. They must be ridiculed and defamed, and every cure they advertise must be asserted as a hoax. A full fifth of psychopoliticians' time should be devoted to smashing these threats. Just as in Russia we had to destroy, after many, many years of the most arduous work, the church, so we must destroy all faiths in nations marked for conquest. You must recruit every agency of the nation marked for slaughter into a foaming hatred of religious healing. You must suborn district attorneys and judges into an intense belief as fervent as an ancient faith in God that Christian Science or any other religious practice which might devote itself to mental healing is vicious, bad, insanity-causing, publicly hated, and intolerable. We have battled in America since the century's turn to bring to nothing any and all Christian influences, and we are succeeding. While we today seem to be kind to the Christian, remember we have yet to influence the Christian world to our ends. When that is done, we shall have an end of them everywhere. You must work until religious is synonymous with insanity. You must work until the officials of city, county, and state governments will not think twice before they pounce upon religious groups as public enemies. Remember, all lands are governed by the few and only pretend to commit with the many. It is no different in America. The petty official, the maker of laws alike, can be made to believe the worst. It is not necessary to convince the masses. It is only necessary to work incessantly upon the official, using personal defamation, wild lies, false evidences, and constant propaganda to make him fight for you against the church or against any practitioner. Movements to improve youth should be invaded and corrupted, as this might interrupt campaigns to produce in youth delinquency, addiction, drunkenness, and sexual promiscuity. Now, you'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb not to see that this is going on. And a little bit more. By psychopolitics, our chief goals are effectively carried forward. To produce a maximum of chaos in the culture of the enemy is the first and most important step. Our fruits are grown in chaos, distrust, economic depression, and scientific turmoil. At least a weary populace can seek peace only in our offered communist state. At last, only communism can resolve the problems of the masses. A psychopolitician must work hard to produce the maximum chaos in the fields of mental healing. That's what they call it. He must recruit and use all the agencies and faculties of mental healing. He must labor to increase the personal and facilities of mental healing until at last the entire field of mental science is entirely dominated by animal magnetism's principles and desires. To achieve these goals, the psychopolitician must crush every homegrown variety of mental healing in America. Actual teachings of James, Eddie, and Pentecostal Bible faith healers amongst your misguided people must be swept aside. They must be discredited, damned, arrested, stamped upon, even by their own government, until there is no credit in them, and only animal magnetism healing remains.
So there you have it, folks. This is not chance. This is a planned attack on sanity, on Christianity, on your individual rights, and your relationship with God.
But the defense is to know that it goes back upon itself and destroys itself. And as our Mrs. Eddy said, every hour, do the watch. God is all. evil is nothing, and don't just keep, and wearing them down to they destroy themselves in confusion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one more thing to read. Should independent researchers actually discover means to undo psychopolitical procedures, you must not rest, you must not eat or sleep, you must not stint one tiniest bit of available money to campaign against it, discredit it, strike it down, and render it void. For by any effective means, all our actions and researches could be undone. And they will be undone, because we are going to be every bit as tireless in this, which is what Craig just said.
Yeah, working day and night.
We are also working day and night. And the ultimate thing is, this is, it seems like a big thing, but it's the Adam dream. It is an illusion. It's not the truth. And by knowing it and declaring it and understanding it, you can't just declare that unless you understand it. It will be wiped off the face of the earth. And Craig, tell them about, during the trial time at our church and how you felt you couldn't think, and what were you told?
During the trial time of our church in the late 70s, we had work parties, and we got together to do unity, do good work for our church and our homes and the community, Muppets and all. And it was our safety. But during the days, and sometimes partly during those times, I would feel that I had a flood of thoughts coming to me. Then they weren't good. They were bad about others and myself. And everything from fear to inadequacy, we were taught to sing hymns until the noise stopped, and it worked. So we learned. I saw learned from one of them, just keep singing, and we got our work done, and learned quite a few hymns in the meantime. So it was a saving. If you quiet, if you do not engage the lie that you hear with an argument, if you don't, start to argue and accept it and kind of reason with it, basically that's the better term, reason with it, you can win. And it can end. All it wants is an audience to start its methods. So don't be the audience.
It's beautiful, Craig.
Thank you.
It's one of the things I've learned, and I know others, if you feel you can't even think that you're being so bombarded, get the hymnal out and just start singing. And the louder Era screams, the louder you sing. Shout the truth. And it will go. It's a powerful instrument, our singing. Jeremy, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just was thinking about when my kids were young, my son came to me and said, his sister kept arguing with him. I said, well, it takes two to argue. So
yes.
Just stop that.
No, nobody wins an argument.
Do not engage. It's what the adversary wants you to do. Engage in an argument. Then you're giving it power and life.
Eve had, instead of denouncing it.
Exactly.
Practitioner told me from Mary Vickery, when rumination begins, something to that extent, do not ruminate with error. And it was important. Mary Vickery said, don't ruminate. And I think the definition of ruminate is to argue and reason with the error.
And hash over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Chew again. You would.
Yes, chew again. Chew it over like a cow. What is it in the trial? Man ruminated.
The trial began.
And he put him in the court of error, fighting against the court of error, where
you can't win.
You can't win it. Nope, you have to disengage yourself and not go there. But I was interested by what Craig said about the hymn singing, because that's exactly what I found during those trial years. There were times I felt like I couldn't think straight, and I would start singing. And it's true now with anything. If you ever feel like you can't think, sing.
I remember in one of the classes, Mrs. Evans talked about singing so loud that, the error flees away. It's just the same as telling it to get out of here. She sang so loudly.
Thank you. Yes.
I think also this declaration of God as my mind, the Christ mind is our mind, and that mind does not drift into evil. And even if we don't feel it yet, we just declaring it means something. And I'm sure that's why she gave it as part of the daily treatment.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you can't sing, recite the Lord's Prayer. Recite the definition of the scientific statement of being. And keep reciting it until it does its work. Because truth does the work. Truth will free you from the onslaught if you persist.
My practitioner told me to remember all my testimonies, that they were like stars in my crown of rejoicing or something like that. So, and that has helped a lot too. There have been many times where I've gone, okay, God brought me here. A lot of good's happened because I'm coming here. He gave me work to do. That work is not done. And then I start thinking from there, and then I get through it. So, yeah, and Collectania also, Mrs. Eddy came across somebody who was sleeping, and she woke her up and got her up and said, that's not a natural sleep. You got to rouse yourself and get going.
Yes.
And you feel that coming on sometimes, so you got to fight. So.
Yes, it will get you in a very drowsy, mesmeric state. And that you're feeling drugged even though you're not on a drug, that you rouse yourself from. Keep your alertness. And sometimes that will try to come over you when you do a watch. It's a very common thing to have happen. You suddenly, oh my gosh, you're so tired. So.
Or it will come upon you when you have something to do for the church. Or it will come upon you just before a church service.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank goodness for Christian Science. We know all of this is not our thinking. I guess that's where I'm so grateful for Christian Science, is that we know this is not most people would attach it to their own thinking, but it isn't. And that starts us down the road of freeing us from it when we know it's not our thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, exactly. And the people who wrote the Communist Manifesto that this article is part of, sort of, or related to, they think it's their own thinking. And that's why they're out to control the world, because they don't want somebody else to control them. They don't know God. They don't know their relationship with God. That's why, whatever you call it, communism, socialism, whatever, it's all animal magnetism. Mm-hmm. And the only answer to it is Christian Science, which is why animal magnetism is out to destroy Christian Science, if it can.
Because really, only in Christian Science do you learn that all reflect the one mind. And it says that if you do love your neighbor as yourself by knowing that they only have the mind of Christ, how can that mind control you? It cannot.
Exactly.
And you see, part of what they're trying to do is cause this chaos. All this, what was going on in some of our cities. What was that? Chaos and getting people to turn on each other. That's not normal or natural. That's totally animal magnetism. And we must see it that way. in seeing it that way, we can realize it's unreality and destroy it. But if we think it's actually happening and people are mean and horrible and hateful, and then we've just jumped into the fray.
But it is a planned, concerted attack on Christianity and America, because America is really the first truly Christian nation that was established on Christian principles. And that's why it's under such attack. But if we have God on our side, the battle is God's, and the truth is always the victor, as long as we don't lose sight of it.
You do have to watch how much you value your own intellect, though. I was thinking while reading the definitions of hypnotism, when I was a senior in high school, a hypnotist came in and did a demonstration, and he said that only intelligent people can be hypnotized. And it was so funny to see all the kids like really want to show how intelligent they were so they could get hypnotized. So,
and why would you say that only intelligent people can be hypnotized?
Just so that people would
drop their guard.
Yeah, drop their guard, I guess.
Well, I think it's his observation that it's easier for him to hypnotize people who think that they are intelligent.
Yeah.
Because what are they declaring? They're declaring they have a mind
of their own. They are relying on it.
Yep. So,
right.
So they are easily hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
That's why some of the most educated people are the most hypnotized. No person we should worship or think is so smart just because they've got some degree. They can be the most, and these are things Mrs. Evans taught us. We went into this and we did study this. We were not blind to what was going on in the world, nor must any of us be. We should all know this. We should all have this pamphlet, as hair-raising as it is, because it is what's going on. And in order to defeat it, we have to know what's going on. We can't just wring our hands and say, oh my gosh, what's happening? We do know what's happening. What does it say? There is a war in heaven, right? A war in heaven.
Michael and his angels.
Right. Yes, against the dragon. And this Pilar wrote to this, but as of old, evil still charges the spiritual idea with error's own nature and methods. It's another tactic of animal magnetism. It'll turn the lie on you and say you're doing the things that it's doing. This malicious animal's instinct, of which the dragon is the type, incites mortals to kill morally and physically even their fellow mortals. And worse still, to charge the innocent with the crime. This last infirmity of sin will sink its perpetrator into a night without a star. We need to know this, and we need not to be afraid to know it, because we must be loving. The hell with we must be loving. We're not loving to an error.
I love divinely. That's different. So.
Right. And error needs to be rebuked. It needs to be denounced. And if somebody's feelings get hurt, well, good. They need to be hurt. For their own sake, wake them up.
Well, and we often in the watches, we would use this, a lake of fire and a night without a star, for those malicious people, malicious animal magnetism trying to operate. It's what Eustace has said. We impersonalize it. It's not person, place, or thing, but it's if it seems to be wearing a face, we can't just all of a sudden, we have to be loving. This is how ERA has gotten as far as it has. Oh, and don't let the books out that tell you how to handle me. Heaven forbid you get watches, prayers, and arguments. No, you don't want to read that book.
Unauthorized.
It's unauthorized. Yeah, terrible book.
That is the work of the devil. Guess what? The devil is having a heyday in a lot of organizations that started out as good organizations.
Yeah.
found this quote recently in that fragments of unpublished items ascribed to Mary Betty. Animal magnetism can find no channel except an unguarded consciousness through which to act.
That's it. And that is definitely our protection. You see, if you're not attracted to the ways it would try to work,
then it can't get you.
It can't get you. But this is where we have to watch our children because, they get addicted to gaming they have subliminal messages in them. Some of these sordid movies, what does it say? The serpent or the dragon wars against innocence.
And then blames innocence.
Yes, it tries to, but then it says that the lamb slays the wolf. Innocence and truth overcome guilt and error. Science is able to destroy this lie called evil. And, spiritual idea has given the understanding a foothold in Christian science, the seed of truth and the seed of error, of belief and understanding, yea, the seed of spirit and the seed of matter, are the wheat and tares which time will separate. The one will be burned and the other to be garnered into heavenly places. So you be on the one that's going to be garnered into heavenly places, and not be attracted to the false. Again, they have it all around, all the sexual things we talked about that last week to get you into that.
And we need to encourage our children that it's okay for them not to fall for some of the fads that their peers are falling for that will lead them down the wrong road. I mean, rock music with all kinds of suggestive words, and the music sounds good and people don't pay attention to the words, but it goes into their subconsciousness and influences them. I mean, we can't
sorry.
Who's speaking?
Go ahead.
No, it's interesting what Mary was saying about the video games and so forth. I have witnessed that in my own grandkids. They get so addicted to these games, and I was even thinking and said, well, they even get violent when they start losing because, of course, those games are rigged so they cannot win, even no matter how smart they are. And it makes them very angry. And I pointed it out to my daughter, said, you should really be monitoring this because they become very violent. And yes, I think our youth is being bombarded and hypnotized by all these things that it seems to be very innocuous and very innocent. But I think behind it there is the purpose of having our youth being hypnotized towards violence and ungodly things. So I'm glad that's mentioned, yes.
Yes, thank you. And now I understand the pharmaceutical companies are coming out with a drug to cure addiction. So first you get addicted to a drug, and then you take a drug to cure your addiction. Thank you very much, pharmaceutical world. But I think
they've done that already with methadone. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Drugs that you have to take.
Yeah, and its addiction is worse than the drug. It's been known. It's so you take methadone and then you have a downer, or what they call it, drawbacks. It's worse than heroin. So they keep taking.
Yep.
And
I think now also the MTA, the transit here in New York, they were criticized because they were putting announcements about, directed to people that use drugs. Don't feel bad, but feel empowered that you're using safely. And the reason they're saying that is because I know, because it's even nearby where I live, they open a place where people that use drugs can go in there and, quote unquote, safely use the drug. So they go there, they get the syringe, and they bring, of course, their own drugs. They take it, and then they're monitored by nurses or assistants to make sure they don't get a adverse reaction or they get an overdose. So this is all, I mean, it's amazing how they encourage, oh yeah, and don't feel bad that you're using drugs, but feel empowered that you're using it safely. It just doesn't make sense.
That's a new one.
Yeah, that's a new one.
Yeah,
But
so-
you see, again, what is the answer? Mrs. Eddy, all along about medicine and drugs and all that, all along teaching us. This is our safety.
I mean, is that picture what God created?
No.
Right.
Absolutely.
Can anybody be happy experiencing that kind of crap? Of
No.
course not.
Innocence, I know it said innocence was so important, and that is, children and our own innocence requires us to look into ourselves and check ourselves so that we not be misled and our children not be misled and go down the wrong path, and that's an hourly thing, I'm sure.
It is.
If they do
It
that.
is. And just as the right thought of that wife in the watching point help protect her husband, so our right thoughts definitely help protect our children, those we love, and we reach out all of those who are all receptive. Our right thought will help keep them safe, even if they go through a period of not, you think maybe they're not safe, but they will come out all right. Because truth is the victor. It will always be the victor, sooner or later. It has to be. So yes, you know that in the Bible, the seed of the righteous shall be blessed. We can know this, even if our kids seem to be going through a troubling time. They will come out all right. You keep knowing the truth. It is powerful. One of the articles Carrie sent me was "The Nothingness of Nothing" by Frederick Dixon, a very good early worker. And he writes, when Mrs. Eddy realized the nothingness of evil, she found the way to its destruction. For centuries, the world had been fighting, or rather the instinct of good in the world had been fighting evil as a tremendous reality. The human being, animated by some dim realization of principle, went into the battle with evil, not regarding his true self as the image and likeness of principle, and so as its master, but regarding it rather as described in the old folk tales, and himself as a frail and sensuous man engaged in a more or less unequal contest with it. He forgot that if the writer of Revelation pictured this evil as a red dragon for the purpose of symbolizing its pretended might, he later endowed it with other names for evil, that old serpent called devil and Satan, with the intention of insisting upon the oneness of its claims to counterfeit reality before consigning them to oblivion and nothingness. Thus, Mrs. Eddy in Science and Health first drew attention to the obvious fact that if God principle was good and was infinite, there was no room for evil as a reality. Scholasticism roused itself into a veritable passion of argument, in the course of which it rejected every one of its own axioms and behaved more like the demonic amidst the tombs than anything else. So, again, who else, what other religion, if you want to call it, knows the nothingness of evil? And here we stand. But there's steps to that standing, and it must be done with seeing the error that needs to be conquered, disproved, annihilated, denounced, yes. And then
As an error and not as a person,
not as a person. And
which can
then
be tricky sometimes.
yes, but then get the victory over it. And this is our work, and it's work we must not fail to do. We didn't even get into Judas. I had a lot about Judas, but he was sorely tempted. Mrs. Eddy said if the disciples hadn't slept, and we would be much farther along in this truth. And that's true for us now. We mustn't sleep. So Gary is going to end now.
Read this.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this is from an article entitled "Handling and Destroying the Adversary" by Louis J. Lewis, 1919, Christian Science Journal. The scriptural allegory in the book of Genesis explains how the concept of evil first appeared to the human mind in the form of a serpent. So subtle is the serpent that it has deluded mankind ever since the beginning of history. And so plausible is its argument that it has deceived even the wise. Christian Science shows not only that this deception is unnecessary in our lives, but that we fail to exercise a divine right when not resisting it. Moses fled from the serpent, showing fear of it and ignorance of what it meant, until God commanded him to handle it. And when he obeyed the Lord, the nothingness of evil was revealed, for the serpent became a rod. Immediately following this experience, he proved the nothingness of leprosy. As we awaken to the understanding of the subtlety and powerlessness of evil as exposed in Christian Science, mankind will neither fear it, submit to it, nor ignore it, but will courageously handle and destroy it in thought, the only place it can claim in existence. Christian scientists will prove themselves to be practical metaphysicians if, when adverse conditions arise, they calmly face the situation and confidently apply their knowledge of Christian metaphysics. They do not tell the sufferers who have just turned to Christian Science for help that because there is no sin, disease, or death, they are not suffering. They do not close their eyes to the apparently existing conditions in the world, filled as it seems to be today with sinners and sick people, many of them hungering for the priceless message of love and compassion offered in Christian Science. They realize that just as there seem to be different claims of diseases and sins, just so there seem to be specific thoughts in the human mentality, which produce the physical troubles. These multifarious phases of evil are not to be ignored, but must be handled and destroyed. Some forms of evil are easily recognized and disappear quickly in the presence of truth and love acknowledged. Others seek to hide themselves. It is just as if you could hear this suppositional devil reasoning that it was perfectly all right to declare the allness of God good, but never mind me. And then this subtle evil would endeavor to put on a disguise, mesmerize its subject, and then undisturbed proceed to accomplish its work. There are many differing religious beliefs and schools of healing, many well-meaning and many evilly inclined people speaking, writing, and thinking wrong thoughts and trying to lay down laws, as it were, for us all. Some think ignorantly, while many, with deliberation, work maliciously. The only power their thoughts can even seem to have, however, is the power one allows them. The evil thinker can be easily deprived of his seeming power when the Christian scientist realizes that the very basis of the evil thinker's work is a false basis, because he assumes either that brains think or that evil is power. The Christian scientist who is awake recognizes the evil at once and knows that there is no intelligence or power apart from God. What a debt of gratitude humanity owes to our leader. In a few simple words, she shows that the activity of the truth not only deprives one person of the seeming power to do evil, but makes it possible for one to be protected against the evil activity of even a group of persons. And so, whether it be a single person or an entire organization thinking wickedly, it is only the wisdom of this world, which is foolishness with God. The healer who thus handles the adversary does not think that too much is being said or written about evil, but rather does he, with faith in the scriptures Obey the injunction to cast out devils in Christ's name. There is joy awaiting the one who may be consciously or unconsciously slumbering under this seeming influence when the day star of truth arises, for it awakens and leads him out of error's darkness into truth's eternal light.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.